Greetings, folks. This is Pastor Ben from Piecing It Together with Annika and Ben. Recently, I had a really incredible conversation with two of the Peace Fellowship's gun violence activists, Margery and Jan. If you started the interview in the previous episode, you've seen part of that already. It was a great episode. We talked a lot about a variety of issues surrounding gun violence prevention, the future of our work as an organization, the future of gun violence in a nation that is obviously in chaos and changing, and how we deal with these changes. So this is part two. It is simply just going to pick up right where we left off. And continue this great conversation. So please listen to this conversation and join. If you want more information, check us out at presbypeacefellowship.org. Thank you and enjoy, and peace be with you. I don't care what people's views are about a platitude of other sort of moral issues. I don't care. I don't care how you feel about me personally as a gay person. I don't care how you feel about a lot of other things. You should care a lot about people being killed by other people, right? And so I don't know why every church, right, doesn't have an active gun violence prevention sort of arm, because this is a disgusting thing. Like, we cannot sustain this, nor can we sustain our silence, right, as an institution, as a larger institution, right? So how do you feel, I guess, Margery, how do you feel about the church's role in this discussion? Because I happen to think it's a pretty damn big one.
Oh, that's a great opening. Thank you so much for that. I first want to go back to that gun violence gospel values document that I said was the moment for me that, to use your word, radicalized me. Because what it did was it gave me language to articulate what I had felt and just hadn't necessarily put the words to. And you talk a lot about morality. The thing I find myself talking about all the time that I never expected in a million years would be a thing I would spend so much time talking about: idolatry.
Yeah, that one.
And that was like the aha moment for me with that document. And so Jan mentioned our dear friend and mentor, James Atwood, who was a longtime member of the Peace Fellowship and spent many years of his ministry teaching and preaching and writing books and writing overtures, the overtures you mentioned before, and helping to do all of those things, pushing the church to have a voice in this conversation about gun violence and taking a stand and speaking out about gun violence. And so in 2011, I got to meet Jim, and that was what I needed. And Jim and his understanding, his theological understanding, was fundamental to my moving into this and then taking this on. So my ministry around gun violence prevention has really been about helping the church to find its voice and find its place. When I met Jan in 2015, we teamed up and have been diligently working together ever since to help the church have what it needs in order to find its voice, in order to actually take action. So a lot of those overtures that you talked about that the Peace USA has came right out of the brain of Jan Orr-Harter and a lot of folks that we are working with to really have good, solid policy for the church. And then we take that policy and we make programs about it. So our latest effort is the James Atwood Institute for Congregational Courage. We started it last year. We had the first one at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico, where we brought 72 people together and taught them how to do gun violence prevention ministry together. We're going to have our second one at Massanettes Springs Conference Center in Harrisonburg, Virginia, this year on September 24th to the 27th. We are bringing folks together from across the country to learn how to do gun violence prevention ministry together in teams and making a network across the church. As you really clearly said, we have to learn how to work in community. We have to learn how to speak and find our courage. And that happens often and better in community when we feel like we are not speaking on our own, but we are speaking with people at our backs. And we are saying things that are consistent. So we've worked really hard to build good policy. We've worked hard to put resources together and to create programs for folks to use. And now we're bringing folks together to, give them the crash course training and then go out into the world and do the things that need to be done. And given the fact that our federal government is so opposed to having consistent laws across the nation, we have very different situations in very different locations across the country. So local work is really valuable and necessary. And so we give people the grounding that they need at the Atwood Institute and then send them back to their communities where they can speak from a place of faith, where they can gather up a coalition of church folks beyond their local church and do the work that needs to be done in their community relevant to the legislative and the local situation right there. So that's how I would speak to that piece.
Yeah, and Jan, I'm gonna tweak the question a little because you probably don't know this, but you have achieved kind of legendary status in the Presbyterian gun violence realm, right? And you've been part of this, right? You've been part of crafting actual language. You've been part of pretty significant discussions, and so I guess I would like you maybe to talk a little bit about how we have evolved, right? About the way that we're willing to talk more forcefully about these things. But also just in general, right? I mean, you probably have, right, a pretty strong opinion about where the church needs to be.
Well, we've evolved. I'm doing my first podcast in my nightgown because it was 7:30 in the morning in Texas. Um, yes, the church has evolved. I'm just sort of piggybacking on what Margery said. There's the church where we talk about the policy at the General Assembly level, which is fantastic. And that's our unified voice. But where the rubber hits the road for the church is the local congregation. Some are small and struggling. Some are very vibrant and moving. Most are somewhere in between. It's the local congregation that is the key to this, and that's what Jim Atwood, told us, is that we needed congregations and pastors to be more courageous to turn this issue around. So the Peace Fellowship works. We primarily work with congregations. We don't try to get too much involved in church bureaucracy, though we are partners with the denomination. But our primary service is to people in the pews. And one of the reasons Presbyterians are way ahead of other denominations, in my view, is that we have so much emphasis on the priesthood of all believers and the lay leadership in the denomination. And it's that it's those people who are the ones who are making this happen. The resources that we offer them continue to evolve. Our first congregational toolkit early in the 2000s was a very pastoral one. How to respond to people who are grieving, how to intervene if you think someone may kill themselves. It was a very pastoral toolkit. We turned that into an action-oriented toolkit, and then we turned it into telling the stories of what congregations are doing in action against gun violence. So the Peace Fellowship is kind of like a clearinghouse of ideas that come in from different parts of the country, and we share out. Like yesterday, we got wonderful photographs from a congregation, and we're going to be able to share those. We got a poster from a congregation that they put on the inside the bathroom stalls in every bathroom in their church, and we shared that. So we do a lot of cross fertilization. The main things that we're working on, again, the Atwood Institute, where people can come for advanced training on gun violence prevention. We really encourage churches to send teams to that. If a pastor comes by themselves, that's wonderful. We'll send them home knowing how to preach and talk effectively about this, but it's much better if they have a lay person or a lay team with them. We have our Guns to Gardens action circles. This month, July, next month, we're moving into our 5th year of all volunteer effort to lead these action circles to grow the Guns to Gardens movement. We just did some cleanup on our database, and we found that we've had almost 600 people pass through these action circles since 2021. That's astounding. And those people have gone on to do Guns to Gardens safe disposal events in 25 states so far. That's a very empowering thing for congregations to learn to do in their parking lot. Other things that we're working on, we've alluded to this new curriculum about protecting children. Those action circles are going to be offered online starting in the fall. It's a 4-session action circle. This one's a little different. We have designed it so that people can take the action circle from the Peace Fellowship leaders, and then we will give them the curriculum and they can lead it in their local community. So this one is going to spread, we hope, like wildfire. One of the things we're going to focus on at the Atwood Institute that congregations could make a real difference on is state level advocacy. The federal government is abandoning the effort to save American lives from gun violence. Not only are they abandoning it, they're setting it back by actually cutting the staff who monitor the background checks, who monitor, the 50,000 federally licensed gun dealers and the 5,000 stores and the 6,000 gun shows. They're cutting all those people. So we're moving into an era where, the Wild West was a myth of Hollywood, but the Trump administration is going to make it a reality in the next few years because guns are going to become incredibly accessible. So the state level impact on this is very important when the federal government abandons protecting lives. And we're going to have some special training at the Atwood Institute on how churches and congregations can impact their state legislatures. We're going to have Laurie Haas from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg Center for Gun Violence Prevention Solutions. She is an expert in how Virginia has addressed this at the state level. And we're also going to have the mayor of Harrisonburg, Virginia, with us, who ran on a platform of gun violence prevention and was elected twice on that platform. So we're going to be talking about how you can make a difference at the state level, and what are the actions at a state level that can gain bipartisan support. And so good things are happening at state levels in spite of the fact that the federal government is putting the gun lobby back in charge of this issue. So there's a lot that's going on with congregations, and that's really the heart of the church, and that's how we really change our country, is from the bottom up. That's one of the great images of that Isaiah 2:4, beating swords into plowshares. Shane Claiborne, who's part of the Guns to Gardens theological group in Philadelphia, talks about that passage, that the people were so tired of violence in Isaiah that they took the weapons into their own hands and started beating them into plowshares. And that change doesn't come from the top down, it comes from the bottom up. And so the role of the congregation is sacred and critical to saving American lives. I just wanted to say one more thing. When we talk about gun violence, there's different types of gun violence, and congregations may feel drawn to different parts of this. The way I think about it is there is gun suicide, which is about 60% of gun violence. And this is people, largely white people, but more and more people of color and children of color, This is people killing themselves with guns. Our other major problem is among teens and young men of color who are killing each other. We have also domestic gun violence where family members are killing each other. But you have an issue of people killing themselves and people and a category of poverty, scarcity, abandonment in our society, killing each other. And one of the reasons gun violence was able to escalate is because, frankly, this is going to sound terrible, but in our society, it became okay that if people have mental illness and they want to kill themselves, that is okay. And if people are black and brown and they want to kill each other, those young men want to kill each other, go at it. It's okay with our society. And so we have allowed gun violence to progress in these two major groups out of racism and discrimination against people who have depression. A third of Americans will experience depression in their lifetimes. Depression is not rare, and being a person of color is not a sin. So, we have to overcome some of the spiritual sickness that tells us that it's okay for these two groups to self-destruct. And that's where the church comes in at the congregational level in our community, saying this is not okay. These are all children of God. It is not okay for our society to accept this type of self-destruction of these groups.
Ben, you're on mute.
I don't even know how to unmute myself. But I just want to add to that. Like, I get asked a lot about, I'm against all violence, right? So on complex issues, my baseline is always, I don't believe people should die who aren't supposed to die, right? I mean, like, that is my thing. I don't care. So I can critique both sides pretty easily, because I think killing people is wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. But one of the things people ask me a lot is, if you're against violence, why do you keep pulling gun violence out like it's a separate thing, right? And my response is because it is a separate thing. And the reason it's a separate thing is the prevalence of guns is astounding, right? They are everywhere. You can get them very easily. I'm from Pennsylvania. I got them for Christmas, right? I mean, you can get guns easily. The other thing is they are profoundly lethal. Not many people stab themselves to death. They increase the success of suicide by like 90%, right? It's 90% more effective. They increase the chance of death in every situation, right? That is not true of every other weapon. That is not true of every other tool of violence. Whether you like it or not, it is not the same. And then the other thing is the culture that we have constructed around it, right? And especially now, right? Because look, we are in the grip of a toxic masculinity that makes violence not just something that's okay, but it's celebrated, right? We should not be thrilled that we bomb other nations, right? In fact, we should use that force, if we're going to use it, with absolute gravity and with grief, right? That it's even necessary. So first of all, as a nation, we need to repent, right, of this violence that we are committing everywhere. But we also have to reject this idea, right, that somehow guns make you tougher, somehow guns make you more male, right? Somehow, look, I can make all the penis jokes about guns you want, right? I can give you plenty of them. But, so the idea that, we have glorified, I think, Margery, you talked about idolatry, right? There is no greater idolatry in this nation than the worship of money and guns. If you can find one, let me know. But I mean, those are the two, right? We have made these things sacred. And so I guess I know we have to wrap up. This has been, thank you guys. This is a great conversation. You have to come back. There's going to have to be a part 2 to this, but, because I have like 15 other questions. So, but we are in an environment, and what I want to do is lead into this idea that we have to talk about where we're headed. Right. Because the truth of the matter is, and Jan, you said it with a clarity that I can't repeat, the federal government no longer cares about this. That look, the people in charge in the White House, the people in, places of power, with the exception of the minority voices, right? This is not a fundamental issue that we are talking about anymore. We are surrounded by chaos 24 hours a day on purpose. We are living in a disordered society, and I mean that in every way that word sounds. We are sowing violence for the purpose of division and gaining power. Do you know what all I hear now, right, from progressives is, yeah, we got to hit them the way they hit us, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, right? No, that's bullshit. Christians can't do that, right? We're not allowed to do that. So as we enter this next phase, one of the things that stands out to me is the big positive is that as I've been attending these different rallies and the No Kings rallies and the other rallies that have been happening, it is a beautiful convergence of issues. And it feels to me, and I'll let you tell me if this is true or not, that we have finally figured out how to harness our intersectionality. How to understand that the gun violence movement and the anti-racism movement are similar, right? We have similar interests. We are still, I don't like racial violence, right? I don't like sexual violence. I don't like religious violence, right? I don't like any of it. But to see all these people actually cooperating, which progressives are not good at, frankly, and sort of no one issue is trying to outweigh the other. We are expressing this mass idea that none of this is okay, right? I was giving a talk at my church on gun violence this past week, and I talked about this idea that it's not that our movement has disappeared. It's not that our movement is going to be shut down because the president's a maniac. It's not that our movement's going to be silent suddenly because we are afraid of, the Orange Menace or whatever. So, we are part of now both a larger movement, right? Because let's face it, you cannot help but see the violence of this administration, right? Every single day. And so violence has become, I think, kind of a unifying concept, right? Because we are watching people get hurt every day, whether they're being dragged off the street, imprisoned for speech. And yes, this is happening in America. I'm sorry, folks. It's the truth. Whether it's, this idea that we just want to bomb the hell out of everybody that we disagree with, right? The progressive movement, though, I'm very excited, right, about where we're headed with this idea that we can cooperate. But I have a cousin who was a Democratic advisor. She advised a congressman. And I said to her one day, she comes to my church online frequently, but before she came to church, I used to say to her, I want every progressive to find their local church that cares about these issues and attend it. I don't care if you believe a damn word they say. These people need support because there has to be a religious voice, right? The conservative movement is religiously based. We have to be able to combat that language, and that has to be done with faith language. And so, the movement needs us specifically, because they are fighting a beast in some cases they don't understand. So all this is to ask you, right? I'm sorry. I'm cranky this week. I've been on soapboxes every day, but, so I have hope. I have incredible hope in this moment. I think we have a chance to really make true change, right? If we can survive this, and if we can have elections again and all that stuff, right? There's a lot of ifs, I guess. Because I now think we have seen what it looks like when you let violence lead. And when people tell me, for example, that laws don't matter and laws don't change anything and why ban this and why ban that, my response is we've never tried it. How do you know if it works? And, Jan makes an important point, right? That the gun violence movement is not just a group of people who hate guns, right? It's a spectrum of people who want people to stop dying. And so, yes, you have Pastor Ben over here who frankly thinks guns aren't worth the moral trade-off anymore. They're out of my life forever. And then you have people on the opposite end who want everyone to own nukes and grenades and whatever they want, right? So, but the rest of the world is in the middle. And so that's the language, right? That we're now learning to speak. But, so I want you to just comment quickly on kind of where you see the movement today, with people trying to, I guess, predict our death already. And, what gives you hope, right, as we're moving forward? So, Jan, go ahead. Let me hit there you go.
What gives me hope? Well, a year or so ago, Margery got a call from a local pastor in Fort Worth, Texas, Reverend Kiev Tatum, saying, African American pastor, we're having gun violence everywhere. My church is in the zip code with the lowest life expectancy in Texas. Can you help us? And since I live, outside of Fort Worth, I was able to be a consultant to this group over the last year, and I'm still working with them. Fort Worth is a very racially segregated community, and it gives me hope to be part of this small, slow, new, multiracial community that is determined out of faith to do something about gun violence. Part of their journey in April to commemorate the assassination of Martin Luther King was a procession through this zip code with a big empty casket. It was a big red casket supplied by the funeral home that deals with the gun violence victims. This casket, and behind the casket, black and white clergy and church members, one with a shofar, the big horn, and every block that we came to, a corner where someone had been killed on that block, we read their name and prayed for them. And it was block after block after block of multiple people having been killed in that neighborhood. And that it gives me hope that group is congealing and coming together in a town where people have not been encouraged to come together. We've just scheduled our first Guns to Gardens event for September 6th. And so we're excited to try to bring congregations across that community together. And hopefully that will be the beginning of a more comprehensive approach to gun violence in that community. That gives me hope.
Margery.
There's a few things right now that are giving me hope. One is, like Jan, a very local effort that a couple of months ago I stumbled across the information that someone else. I live in a relatively small community, and I got a text message while I was sitting at a baby shower, actually, that there was going to be this Guns to Gardens demonstration happening like in my backyard, and it was so disorienting to me because how did I not know about this? And so I tracked down the person whose name was associated with that. She had recently moved to this community from Ohio, where she was involved in a Guns to Gardens effort there, moved here, decided nobody else is doing this, I'm going to do this, and reached out and got a Guns to Gardens demonstration organized. It's happening tomorrow in my community, and it was so remarkable and shocking and delightful that my world suddenly collided. That like people that I have worked with locally in education advocacy and trying to get crosswalks painted. All of a sudden, they were involved with doing this Guns to Gardens demonstration tomorrow with a woman that I had never met before, but I knew other people that she worked with in Ohio. So I feel like all of a sudden these pieces of my life and my work are starting to connect. And so part of what is giving me hope is seeing how many people are standing up, how many people are getting involved, and having something to say and finding ways to find their courage, find community, find the other people who are their people that they can connect with and do something. And the other thing that I would say that is giving me hope is every single day I get emails in my inbox at the Peace Fellowship from folks who are either looking for information or sending me success stories, sending me newspaper articles or clips from the local news, local TV news about programs and projects that they're doing, and that they are finding their voice and showing up and saying, I am doing this out of my faith. I am doing this because this is what my faith calls me to. And that is that I can't remember that happening in 2011 when I first started. So what I think is really, really important to understand is that this is often long, slow work. It is often not a straight line from, the idea to success. There's fits and starts. There's ideas, and then there's maybe things that don't work out well. There's experiments. Sometimes you have to try a project, see what goes well, find your people, do something different. It's long, it's slow, it's perseverance. Jan and I have been working together since 2015 on putting together these workshops and resources and worship resources. And Jan puts out a newsletter from our gun violence prevention group every single month. And a few years ago, we started being able to do local spotlights on congregations that are taking action and celebrating, that people had a Wear Orange event in their congregation. And, here's a group wearing their orange shirts in the middle of, some red state somewhere making a statement. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes leadership. And it takes courage. So wherever any of you are listening, keep going. Even if you've taken one step that feels like a teeny tiny little step, celebrate it and keep going, because that's how this process works. Find more people and keep going. There's a lot of people doing things. I get asked to speak at events on a regular basis, and my one of the themes in what I speak about all the time is there's a narrative out there in the world that the only thing church people have to offer into the gun violence space is thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. It's a lie.
Yeah.
Do not believe it, because people of faith are doing all kinds of action and work and organizing, and they are doing it from their faith. They may not necessarily be doing it with their congregations. Oftentimes, they're the ones in Moms Demand Action or Every Town or violence interruption programs, you name it. Their faith is driving it, but they may not necessarily, they may not be speaking about that necessarily, but it's changing. That's changing. And that gives me tremendous hope, because I learned early on from Jim Atwood that the church needs to be loud and louder, much louder. And so that's a lot of the work that Jan and I have been doing, is teaching people how to get louder, how to actually say these things that need to be said and speak peace into this world of violence. So I'll stop there, because that is, to me, the most hopeful thing that we can do.
Yeah, and I'll say first to folks, if you've not read James Atwood, you should. There is a a lot of clarity in the way that he addresses this issue. But also, I kind of want to I'm going to close, I guess, with some advice for ministers. Because, I'm a spiritual director and, some of my clients are ministers, and this is a hard time to be a minister. And, I get asked a lot about, first of all, if you're in a congregation, stop threatening your minister when you don't like what they say. That's not who we are. But to ministers, I say, look, this is a time for unusual courage. And that means we're going to start saying things we're not comfortable saying. I attacked a politician by name from the pulpit for the first time in my life. After RFK Jr. made his autism statements, I just went for it. Right. And the reason I say this is because I think maybe I'm spoiled, right? But if you are a minister in a congregation and you have built up trust and you have built up love for one another and you have built up the community, right, to sort of respect you and to sort of appreciate you, they will listen to you even if they disagree with you, right? And they'll understand that you're an approachable human being that can be disagreed with. And so, I think the two best comments I've ever gotten about my work in gun violence is, first, a woman in my congregation said, until you got here, we didn't know this happened to real people. Because we've never met somebody who has lost a person to this, right? And then the second one was, I'm not sure I agree with you, but I appreciate your willingness to say where you are. And part of it is, I think ministers are going to have to start struggling openly, right, with the idea that we too are working through this, that sometimes we're thinking out loud, right, and that sometimes we're reacting in moments. But it's also, this is a time to remember who we work for, right? We work for God. Our job is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, and the only way to find violence as a permissible thing in the gospel of Jesus Christ is to throw Jesus away. And so, we cannot, my concern, and I talked about this earlier with the morality piece, is that once you start making the trade-offs, everything is on the table. Anything can happen then. And so, as a minister, I am not willing, frankly, to water down my message on this issue to make people comfortable, because I want them to be uncomfortable. I want this issue to tear your heart out, because it's the only way, right, we are going to connect deeply enough to want it to stop. And so, I am no longer in the business of making people comfortable with my preaching, right? I've never have been, frankly. And I think one of the things I admire about, both of you is that you tell the truth, right, about where you are, not in a way that says, agree with me or die, right? If you disagree with me, but for God's sake, come and tell me, right? Let's talk about it. I gave the first time I gave a forceful sermon on gun violence. I'm from Pennsylvania. I live not far from Pittsburgh, was after the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. And people were so pissed at me. I was a student pastor then. And the minister called me into his office, right? I thought he was going to congratulate me. I thought this was a major thing, right? So, because other people were telling me how much they appreciated it and blah, blah, blah. And he started to tell me about how there was this group of people that were so mad at me. And I said, well, why won't they talk to me? And he said, they never will. He said, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to complain to me or they're going to leave. And he said, this is the way it works. So, if you're going to take a risk, accept the consequences of the risk. And, my church lost people because they didn't want a gay minister, right? Churches lose people over the freaking hymnal. People leave churches for lots of reasons, which to me means, why not go for it, right? If they're eventually going to get pissed off about a hymnal anyway, or something silly, right? Let's face a big issue together. Let's talk about it. Let's get mad at each other. Let's have the debate. And the other thing I want to tell people is, you can bring your communities together to talk about this. And it doesn't have to suck, right? 2 years ago, we pulled together a panel of local officials, sheriffs, legislators. None of us agreed with each other. right? We had sort of the Democratic side or the progressive side and the sort of conservative sheriff. But you know what we did? We found common ground. We realized that, yes, we have the similar concerns about gun trafficking from Pennsylvania. We have similar concerns about securing weapons in the home, right? There is common ground on this issue, and don't let people tell you there isn't. This is not a divisive issue, by the way. This is an 80% political issue, right? People are on the side of gun safety. Always remember that. The wind is at our back, not theirs, right? People have had enough of this. And, you know, as a minister, as ministers, right? I sometimes feel like our job is to disrupt the cycle, right? To say, have you considered the idea that maybe bombing the hell out of Iran wasn't a great idea, and maybe it has effects on your kids, right? Have you considered the fact that this permissive relationship with violence is unnatural, right? And so I just want to encourage, look, every day I pray for humility, courage, and wisdom. That's all I want, right? And then at the end of the day, I confess everything I screwed up. But, you know, so the, you know, courage is hard. But, you know, if you think about the great religious leaders that you admire, right? They're the ones who stood up and said it regardless of the risk. They're the ones who stood up and said it because it needed to be said, not because they wanted to say it. Right. And so, first of all, I just want to say thank you to both of you, to Jan and Margery, for being here and showing us what strong ministers sound like and what courage looks like. I have been to the Atwood Institute. That's where I met Father John Deere, who has become a little bit of an influence in my own life. But, you know, the Atwood Institute is worth your time, folks. It is a great conversation. It is a non-hostile conversation. You will find hunters in the group. You will find your people there, right? Because we're all coming together because we just don't want people to die anymore. But you will also learn how to have this conversation, right? How to talk about this in ways that don't, you know, throw people away or push people away. So maybe, you know, maybe Pastor Ben is not the guy for that because I'm a little intense, but you know, there are other ways to address, you know, different groups. But and look, the toolkit, if you go to presbypeacefellowship.org, you can find the gun violence toolkit. I use it on a monthly basis. I look at it all the time. In fact, yours truly is currently in the process of writing new liturgy for gun violence because I don't think we have enough of it. So and I'm a liturgy nerd, but so, you know, Peace Fellowship, if you haven't connected to the Peace Fellowship, I don't know of a religious organization that's doing the work they're doing, you know, with such intentionality and without, you know, sort of muddying it up with a bunch of other issues, right? We are focused on this, right? It's one of the three legs of the stool, you know, and so get involved, folks. Find us. Sign up for the newsletter, watch the podcast, even if I annoy the hell out of you. And, you know, do connect with us. We want to hear from you. We want to connect with you. And we are just growing a massive movement for peace, right? And we could definitely use it. So thank you so much to both of you. I am going to have you back because there is so much more that I wanted to get into. And I'm sure I'm already in trouble because we're at like an hour and a half. So this may be a two-parter. I'm not sure. I give the producer his, you know, do what you do. So thank you so much. Again, folks, presbypeacefellowship.org. Please like us and subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And it has been my great pleasure to talk to these two incredible women. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben.
All right, now we're going to let it upload for a minute.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. That was great. And I love it when I have to finish a discussion early. So, because I was not done.
Let us come back with some of the congregational activists.
Yeah, I actually want to put together just another roundtable of like, because I had Margery, were you here with Raw Tools? Were you with them, or did we do them separately?
No, we did that. That was a separate conversation. But that was a
Right.
great
Yeah,
conversation.
the
Yeah.
podcast would just Ben. The podcasts are wonderful. Y'all,
Yeah.
please stick
And
with this. Please
yeah,
stick
in
with
fact, I had a conversation with Scotty after that, and I said to him, dude, you need to dig into the theology that you were trained to you know, you were trained in, and speak it loud and clear, because when you went there, I was riveted. He was
Yeah, he
so
is
articulate. Wow.
brilliant. I mean, he's
Yeah,
a brilliant
brilliant.
man. And I
Yeah,
remember, because I had never had a conversation with Scotty longer than 3 minutes, right?
yeah,
And so as we're talking to them and he's talking, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like, how are you not a minister, right? How are you not just
right.
out there every day preaching this stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And so,
I actually,
yeah,
it was a long conversation, and I said to him at one point, because the part that I was just taken by was where he was describing the cross and
mm,
the turning the gun barrel inside out and shining light into where there had been darkness, and I was practically weeping listening to
yeah,
his
it's incredible.
description of it all, and the intentional, thoughtful, prayerful process of transformation, and because and the reason was that at the Atwood Institute, I had this whole conversation with him about i'm i'm not I'm not a fan of wearing a cross that made from a gun, because I think that there's too many like overlapping symbols and how people might interpret it, and I was just ugh. I said, so I'll take another symbol, so I wear one of the round ones
Mm-hmm.
often, and I forgot to put it on this morning. Um, I was going for the orangey look instead, and but listening to that conversation that you had with him, I called him and I said to him, "Now I understand, and I will get one from you, because now I understand what it means for you."
Yeah, I mean, it was fascinating because, like, that was not a planned conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had shown him I was wearing my cross, from Raw Tools. I wear it every day.
Right.
And we had got on, and I said one of the reasons I like to wear it is because it's heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and I can feel it, and it reminds me all the time that it's there. It's sort of like
Right.
my stole. I feel the same way about stoles,
Yes.
right? The
Yep.
heaviness, right? And that it's become a spiritual thing, and that, like you, my first thought was, this is kind of a mixed message, right? I'm not sure how to feel
Yeah.
about this. But then the first time someone asked me about my cross, I got to explain it to them, right? And they were like, oh, like, that's incredible that there are people out there doing this, right?
Right.
And so I think, look, Scotty could be a celebrity. I mean, he's just a fun human being who loves his
Yes.
work and is a decent,
Yep.
good man.
Right.
So yeah, I think we're going to have them back again too at some point.
Yeah.
All right. You're uploaded. I can't thank you enough. I know this was thrown together kind of last minute. But we wanted to get at least one more gun violence podcast in before June was over. So we'll be up next week, I think. And we'll see if we're a one-parter or a two-parter. So
Do you need anything else from us, like links to things, or like what do you need from us?
Yeah, if there are any links you want to share, email them to me. And maybe if you want to give me just a brief bio, I'll send it to him and he'll put it in the show notes so people can see it. Just to who you are in the Peace Fellowship and what you do, and that kind of stuff. So they know you're a resource. Okay. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Take care.
Peace be with you.
All right.
And you too.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
You too. Bye.